At the tender age of 18, I stumbled upon the abandoned Liang Muhan. He audaciously took residence in my home. As time passed, affection blossomed, and I naively believed he harbored feelings for me as well. However, the arrival of his Omega childhood friend revealed the stark truth. His indifference towards me was far greater than I had ever imagined. On the day of his departure, I told him I was going to buy him a birthday cake. 6 years later, the man, brushing against the nape of my neck, inquired, "Weren't you going to get me a birthday cake? Since that is no longer the case, why not let you be the cake?" 1. I found myself seated in a chair, facing Liang Muhan, whom I had not seen for 6 long years, and who was also the client I needed to impress this time. The man sat before me, his expression inscrutable, exuding an aura of authority that rendered him distant and aloof. The moment our eyes met, my heart skipped a beat. His gaze remained devoid of emotion, yet it felt as if I was ensnared in a deep, turbulent pool. I feigned composure and began to articulate the collaboration proposal, but his piercing stare remained fixated upon me. Only after I had thoroughly presented the plan did Liang Muhan's countenance finally shift to reveal a semblance of emotion. "I have changed my mind. Ruishing has decided not to sign this collaboration." Indeed, he still held me accountable. I had once again jeopardized this partnership. What? We had already discussed this before my arrival. Why the sudden change, President Liang? Gu Zhou, who stood beside me, could hardly contain himself upon hearing Liang Muhan's abrupt reversal and quickly rose to challenge him. "Are there areas for improvement regarding this collaboration, Mr. Su?" Liang Muhan stood, responding to Gu Zhou's query, yet his gaze remained steadfastly on me. "No, President Liang, if you have any issues, feel free to amend them at any time." I met his eyes directly, asserting my professional stance. "Do remember to check for messages." "Su Cheng," he spat my name through clenched teeth, evoking a sensation akin to being caught skipping class by the headmaster. "Understood," I replied with a smile, though I felt no fear of him. I had never feared him before, and I certainly did not now. 2. After Liang Muhan departed, I took a deep breath. Thankfully, I had not entirely ruined everything. Gu Zhou approached, throwing a mock punch at the rapidly ascending elevator where Liang Muhan had just disappeared. So handsome, yet turns out to be a fickle-minded fool. We were having a perfectly good conversation, and then he decided to change his mind. I chuckled lightly, neither confirming nor denying his sentiments. It's clear he is not a good egg. A bad egg can only produce a runny yolk. Wouldn't you agree, Su Cheng? I gazed at the figure that had vanished from sight, retracting my gaze to respond softly. Indeed, he is certainly not a good egg. I dared not reveal to him that Liang Muhan's discontent with this collaboration was likely due to me. Otherwise, I would be the one branded as the bad egg. Sighing, I could only report truthfully to my superior, Shun Siu, omitting any mention of my acquaintance with Liang Muhan. "Let's go." Gu Zhou sighed, patting my shoulder as he prepared to leave. I followed closely behind, contemplating how to convince Liang Muhan to relent. "What's wrong?" Noticing his halted steps, I refocused my gaze. Following his line of sight, a mere 10 meters away, Liang Muhan was gazing tenderly at a boy who had his arm linked around his. Suddenly, I despised my keen eyesight, which made it impossible to overlook Liang Muhan's kindness that he had never shown me. Fang Yan, clinging to Liang Muhan's arm, beamed innocently, playfully coaxing him, while Liang Muhan gently removed his arm and whispered something, gesturing for him to return to the car. They stood at the entrance, the light breeze tousling their hair, creating an atmosphere thick with unspoken affection. No one could resist pausing to admire this beautiful scene, myself included, unable to tear my eyes away. A slight chill enveloped me, and I was unaware of when the outside wind had crept in. After Fang Yan entered the car, Liang Muhan departed as well, seemingly oblivious to my presence. Damn, who is that little boy? How can a fool like Liang Muhan be with such a sweet little Omega? Do you think he might be deceived by Liang Muhan? He is so attractive. How could he be blind enough to fall for him? I feel the urge to rescue him, to help him see Liang Muhan's hypocritical facade. What do you think, Su Cheng? I was still lost in thought. Huh? Fortunately, Gu Zhou, oblivious to my distraction, continued his musings. That Omega was simply too good-looking, don't you think? What do you suppose his name is? Fang Yan. This time, I clearly heard his words and replied, "Indeed, he is quite handsome. How do you know?" He looked at me, bewilderment etched across his face. "Could it be that you fancy him?" I merely mentioned he was a high school classmate. Fear not, you have no rival in love. I patted his shoulder, my tone laced with a touch of mock sympathy. However, compared to Liang Muhan, you seem to have little chance. Who says so? I'm only a bit shorter. I'm quite handsome myself, and charming enough to captivate a host of omegas. Very well, I shall keep an eye on you. 3. Upon returning to the hotel, Shinsiu called me again. I initially braced myself for a reprimand regarding my work errors, but instead, I received his compassionate reassurance. It's all right, Su Chang. This project is not urgent. It's a perfect opportunity for you to enjoy your time back home. Thank you, Brother Shin. I was aware of Shinsiu's constant care for me, yet he typically maintained a strict demeanor regarding work, never hesitating to criticize employees, with me being an exception. I met him during university, and he said we clicked immediately. Knowing I was from Jiangcheng, he treated me with even greater kindness. Had he not always had a girlfriend, I might have questioned his intentions towards me. As he put it, fellow townsfolk should support one another. After graduation, I joined his company directly. Fortunately, my diligent studies in college paid off, and after 2 years of work, I became a valuable assistant to him, thus repaying a small portion of his kindness. I closed my eyes and lay back on the bed, momentarily lost in thought as I stared at the ceiling. Suddenly, a ringtone broke the silence, an unfamiliar number, yet I knew who it was. I was momentarily taken aback, and only realized I had not answered when the call ended. Reluctantly, I dialed back. Hello, President Liang. There was silence on the other end, and I let my forced smile drop, calling out again, President Liang? Moments later, a voice responded, Su Chang, call me Liang Muhan. Very well, President Liang. You, forget it, come pick me up. He then provided an address before falling silent. It was somewhat noisy on his end. There must have been quite a crowd. I rubbed my temples and asked, Liang Muhan, this doesn't seem like something I should be doing? Liang Muhan remained silent, and when he spoke again, his tone carried an almost imperceptible threat. Regarding our daytime collaboration, can you come pick me up? Sure. I adjusted my tie and stepped out to catch a ride. When I arrived at the location Liang Muhan had specified, the sky began to drizzle, and I shivered from the chill. I stomped my feet as I entered. The private room was filled with people, and as I pushed the door open, an abrupt silence fell. Liang Muhan was quietly seated inside, and upon seeing me, he waved to bid farewell to the others. I'm leaving. Someone has come to pick me up. With that, he leaned heavily against me, and I had no choice but to wrap my arms around his waist and lead him away. Behind us, a chorus of murmurs followed. The rain continued to fall outside, accompanied by a gusty wind that caused the raindrops to slant, rendering the city hazy. I glanced at the unconscious Liang Muhan, gently patting his face as I asked, Where's your car? I'll take you home. His head rubbed against my shoulder twice, mumbling incoherently as he brushed against my neck, yet he uttered no words. I could only stabilize him with one hand while attempting to reach into his pants pocket, but my arm was not long enough, and I nearly ended up kneeling before him. At that moment, he regained his footing, grabbed my hair, and opened his eyes, bleary as he looked at me. Su Chang, what are you doing? With a roll of my eyes, I contemplated leaving him here, but recalling that he was the client this time, I took a deep breath to reassure myself. I retrieved my hair from his grasp and swiftly extracted the car keys from his pocket, giving him a light pinch as I did so. What on earth was he thinking all day? He seemed momentarily lucid, yet by the end, I still had no idea where he resided, ultimately having to take him back to the hotel. It was already 10 in the evening when I moved Liang Muhan back to the hotel. I intended to book him a separate room, but after searching his entire being, I could not find his ID. Sharing a bed with Gu Zhou was out of the question. With his big mouth, the whole of Jiangcheng would surely know that Liang Muhan and I were acquainted by tomorrow. It was better to avoid any complications. A peaceful parting was preferable. Su Chang, he called out. What now, my esteemed young master? I approached him through gritted teeth, curious about his latest antics, only to find him sitting up, lost in thought with his head bowed. As if sensing my footsteps, he abruptly lifted his head, his slightly opened eyes revealing a tumultuous stir within, his complexion flushed, and breaths quickening. My heart sank. This was likely a sign that his sensitive period had arrived. I halted, beginning to retreat, but he swiftly stood, pulling me into his embrace before I could escape. Liang Muhan, I called out, my voice trembling. desperately hoping he would not lose his rationality. The man responded softly, tightening his grip around me, his lips exploring the nape of my neck, searching for my withering glands. The warmth emanating from him was overwhelming, causing me to shiver. I feared he might lose control and bite down, so I hurriedly turned to face him. Upon losing contact with that particular patch of skin, the dazed Liang Muhan frowned, his entire visage reflecting displeasure. Liang Muhan, let go of me. I will get you some suppressants. I struggled a couple of times, realizing my attempts were futile, and resorted to reasoning with him. No, he grumbled, nuzzling against my shoulder in search of that skin again. How peculiar. Despite my lack of pheromones, he seemed to revel in the scent, much like a dog. However, this did grant me the use of my hands, allowing me to retrieve my phone and call the front desk. Please bring me a box of suppressants, I began, but before I could finish, a sharp pain pierced the nape of my neck as Liang Muhan bit down. In a flurry, I hung up the phone, grasped his head, and lightly slapped him. Who told you to bite? He licked his sharp teeth, as if unsatisfied, and leaned in closer once more. Get away, I said, massaging my sore glands while gripping his tie and glaring at him. Liang Muhan, recognize who I am? I am Su Cheng, not Fang Yen. He blinked, his eyes becoming slightly clearer, seemingly not understanding the relevance of Fang Yen, and responded hazily, I know you are Su Cheng. Knowing that, yet sir, your suppressants. Just leave them at the door. I released him and stood to retrieve the suppressants. All right. Upon collecting the suppressants and turning back, I nearly had a heart attack when I saw Liang Muhan following me like a dog. Go sit down. I will administer the suppressants to you. I pointed to the chair before him, but he remained motionless. Whatever, I placed the suppressants near the entrance and prepared them in his direction. Take off your clothes. This elicited a reaction. He swiftly removed his jacket and began unbuttoning his shirt. Wait, that's enough. I pressed down on his hands, pulling his shoulders to roll up his sleeves. Revealing his strong, muscular arms, I involuntarily swallowed hard, readying myself for a decisive move. Suddenly, I found myself grasped by the throat, and when I looked up, Liang Muhan had kissed me, holding my neck. Stunned, I momentarily forgot to struggle. By the time I regained my senses, he had pried my lips apart and surged in. Realizing he had yet to take the suppressants, I exerted all my strength to push him away, but he remained unyielding. Ultimately, with the last ounce of energy, I plunged the syringe into his skin and injected the medication. When he finally released me, I was left breathless, watching Liang Muhan collapse to the floor in a deep slumber, almost wishing to kick him for what had transpired. Damn it, my first kiss. How amusing it was. I had known Liang Muhan for 7 years, and this was our first kiss, and it occurred during his sensitive period when he was not fully aware. I licked my numb lower lip, feeling both helpless and furious. Hopefully, he would wake up with no memory of this incident. The following morning, when I awoke, Liang Muhan was already fully dressed, sitting on the sofa, staring at me. His gaze made me uneasy, so I steeled myself to explain. You insisted I pick you up yesterday, and since I didn't know where you lived, I brought you here. He furrowed his brow, listening to my explanation with a hint of confusion. What did I do yesterday? You did nothing, I interjected before he could finish, fearing he might recall something. Fine. He stood up, emitting a sound from his throat, and turned to leave. I hurriedly got out of bed, opened the door for him, and smiled. Take care, Mr. Liang. Liang Muhan cast me a glance, his expression displeased as he exited. Just as I was about to close the door, Gu Zhou from across the hall opened his door. He looked at me, then at Liang Muhan's departing figure, shock evident on his face, his mouth forming an O. He took a step into my room, pointing at Liang Muhan's back but unable to articulate a complete thought. We were discussing a collaboration. I quickly improvised, hoping to prevent him from suspecting anything. I had overestimated his intelligence. He scratched his head. Oh, does he have a problem? Coming to the hotel so early to discuss business? I didn't deny it, playing along with his assumption. I also think so. Don't take it to heart. Liang Muhan has issues. He plopped down on my bed as if it were his own, then sniffed the air vigorously, asking, Su Cheng, what is that smell in your room? I nearly jabbed my toothbrush down my throat, muttering in response. Nothing, right? What could it be? We hadn't done anything yesterday. It's a bit spicy like pepper, he remarked. Were you cooking in here? My heart skipped a beat, and I spat out the last bit of foam, taking a strong whiff but detecting nothing. The only explanation could be that it was the scent of Liang Muhan's pheromones. I had just told him nothing had happened this morning. Wasn't that like revealing a secret? Is it strong? Not really, but I dislike the smell of pepper. I froze, recalling a time 7 years ago when I had accidentally added pepper while making kanji for Liang Muhan and told him not to drink it. He had asked why, and I had said it tasted bad with pepper. His actions had paused, and he cautiously inquired, "You don't like the taste of pepper?" What had I said back then? I remembered saying I hated pepper. It turned out that the scent of pepper was Liang Muhan's pheromone. With this realization, I suddenly remembered that I had indeed never known what Liang Muhan's pheromones smelled like. 6 years ago I had asked him, but he had always refused to tell me. I had thought he was disdainful of me for being a beta, unable to detect pheromones. Was it because his pheromones had a peppery scent? I shook my head, dismissing that thought. He didn't care about me. How could he possibly care about whether I liked the scent of his pheromones? Su Cheng? I turned my head, bringing my thoughts back. I'm going out today to have a chance encounter with that beautiful Omega from yesterday. Wish me luck, Fang Yan. Exactly. Gu Zhou beamed, his face alight with excitement. He is so adorable. I've done my research and he likes handsome, aloof types. Just so happens I'm charming and dashing. I chuckled awkwardly, unsure of how to tell him that Fang Yan's aloof type was Liang Muhan. Best of luck. After Gu Zhou departed, an unexpected yearning to revisit the small house enveloped me. After all, it was my home, a place where I had shared a year with Liang Muhan. Without hesitation, I donned my attire and navigated the subway and bus, taking an hour and a half to arrive at the familiar locale. It remained unchanged, a modest dwelling nestled among a cluster of high-rise buildings, with peeling paint and unrestrained sunlight. The only discernible alteration was the dwindling number of residents. Even the breakfast shop, once a reliable establishment, had shuttered its doors. With a sigh, I ascended the stairs, my stomach grumbling, and instinctively retrieved the key from beneath the carpet to unlock the door. Upon stepping inside, instead of the anticipated dust cloud, I was greeted by a stale, musty air, punctuated by the creaking of the fan. No wonder it is said that smells are the strongest triggers of memory. The distinctive scent of this house transported me back to summer days spent with Liang Muhan, lounging on the cool mat while enjoying watermelon. Alas, while the aroma and the house persisted, the people were no longer present. Liang Muhan would likely never wish to return here again. As I moved through the space, it appeared unchanged from 6 years prior, yet an unsettling dissonance grew within me. How could it be that not a speck of dust had settled here after all this time, as if someone had been living here? A terrifying thought flashed through my mind, prompting me to hastily lock the door and rush downstairs. Once I reached the sunlight, my trembling heart had yet to calm when I encountered Uncle Li sitting at the entrance. I approached him with a greeting. "Uncle Li, why is the shop closed today?" He adjusted his glasses, peered closely at me, and exclaimed, "Xiao Cheng, you've returned. We've long ceased operations. No one lives here anymore, so what's the point of running a breakfast shop? Everyone has moved on." I was taken aback, surveying the surroundings and indeed noticing the absence of people. This used to be a bustling neighborhood. They've all relocated to better homes. Do you remember Xiao Liang? Yes, now a big boss. It was he who preserved this place from demolition, allowing us to return here, Uncle Li explained, fanning himself as he recounted the changes of recent years. "Why did you leave without a word? It's been ages since I last saw you, and one day, I ran into Xiao Liang, who said he had no idea where you had gone. Of course, he wouldn't know, as I had not informed him of my departure. I recalled that day, watching Fang Yan come once more to seek him out, telling him, 'I'm going to buy a cake.'" Liang Muhan nodded at Fang Yan, who was beaming, encouraging me to return swiftly. I said nothing, turned, and walked away, leaving for 6 years. To return now and find such circumstances was disheartening. "Hey Xiao Liang, you're back again," I heard Uncle Li say, and I turned to see Liang Muhan stepping out of a car, casually dressed as he approached. The sunlight illuminated him, momentarily conjuring the carefree Liang Muhan of 6 years ago. Back then, he resisted wearing a school uniform, yet he never lacked the exuberance of youth. Now, he exuded a sense of composure, his features more defined, resembling the mature version I had envisioned during high school. "Xiao Liang, Xiao Cheng has returned. You've finally been waiting for him," Uncle Li joyfully announced, taking my hand. Liang Muhan nodded, a faint smile gracing his lips. Yes, I've seen him. All right then. I won't interrupt your reunion, Uncle Li said, retreating into the house, leaving Liang Muhan and me alone. You? I opened my mouth, perplexed by what Uncle Li meant by waiting. Had Liang Muhan truly waited for me all these years? Had he been maintaining the house all along? Aren't you going to invite me upstairs? He inquired. I think not. The house is rather humble, and I fear President Liang might find it uncomfortable, I replied. Liang Muhan clicked his tongue. I lived here for a year. Have you forgotten, Su Chang? I haven't forgotten, I retorted, gazing at the dilapidated house before turning to him. Liang Muhan. You've forgotten, haven't you? And so we parted on a discordant note. I was acutely aware that those moments held little significance for Liang Muhan. They might even be considered a blemish. His indifference towards me concealed lingering resentment. Perhaps it was time to let bygones be bygones. The dust must settle eventually. As Uncle Li had mentioned, he was now a significant figure, no longer needing to deign to reside in this small house. 6 years had passed and we were no longer 18. 6 years ago, he had Fang Yan by his side, and 6 years later he still did. I recalled when Liang's mother sought me out, as if from a melodramatic novel, urging me to leave her son and go abroad. In return, she generously offered to cover all my tuition fees, which I accepted. I could not resist such an enticing offer. Having grown up without parents, I was fortunate to have reached this point in my education, and I had no reason to refuse. As for Liang Muhan, just like his name suggested, I could never warm his heart, so I chose to let go. When I first encountered him, he was crouched by the roadside like a stray dog, battered and appearing quite the delinquent. I had no intention of engaging with him, yet as I approached, he grasped my wrist, pleading for me to buy him something to eat. Reluctantly, I brought him home, and soon we lived together in that small house for nearly a year. At that time, I had no inkling of his true background, believing him to be just another unfortunate soul like myself. Initially, he slept on the sofa, but one time during an episode of his condition, he curled up there, sweating profusely, his face flushed with an unusual redness. Mistakenly thinking it was just a fever, I went to fetch him medicine, but he held on to my hand, preventing me from leaving, and then suddenly flipped over, pinning me beneath him. That was when I realized he was in the midst of a crisis. After administering the suppressant, I stayed beside him on the sofa all night, as he clung to my hand, as though afraid I would abandon him. How did we end up together? Seemed hazy, never truly defined. Reflecting on it now, I realize I may have been overly sentimental. Eventually, Fang Yan entered the picture, and I discovered he was not a poor boy at all, but rather the young master of the Liang family, with Fang Yan being his designated omega for a strategic union. On the day of my departure, it was Liang Muhan's coming-of-age ceremony. Fang Yan found him, beaming as he linked arms with him, urging him to come home. I watched, envious, and was suddenly reminded of my own 18th birthday. How did I celebrate it? That day coincided with Liang Muhan's crisis, and I had cared for him throughout the night. From that moment, I fell for Liang Muhan, yet on his 18th birthday, I chose to let him go. I turned away, wiping my tears, and told him, I'm going to buy you a cake. The cake was procured, but it was merely a consolation for myself. That day, I wept as I consumed an entire cake at the bakery, its sweetness tinged with bitterness. Afterward, Liang Muhan escorted me back to the hotel, and throughout the journey, neither of us spoke. Just as I opened the car door to step out, I heard his voice behind me. Su Chang, I cannot forget, nor will I. I paused for a moment, managing a bitter smile over my shoulder before stepping out completely. You must not forget either. With a resounding thud, the car door slammed shut. I stood outside while he remained inside, fundamentally from different worlds. What difference would remembering make? Upon returning to the hotel, Guzhou buzzed excitedly behind me, chattering away. You won't believe it. I met that Omega today. He is simply adorable. He appears so aloof, yet he is incredibly shy. I think I've fallen for him. What should I do, Su Chang?
If he proposed tomorrow.
Do you think he would reject me? Proposal? I sighed, pressing my forehead in contemplation, deciding it was time to reveal the truth. Yes. What do you mean? Do you think he will fall for me? I mean, he will reject you. You should know he is the young master of the Fang family, right? And do you know who his intended partner is? Marriage candidate? He scratched his head. A look of confusion etched across his face. It's Liang Muhan. What? How is that possible? The world is so small. His face was a canvas of shock, and in a fit of indignation, he slammed his hand on the table. How could Liang Muhan ever be worthy of him? Besides, he doesn't even fancy that improved guy. I twitched my lips, gazing at him helplessly. Who told you that? Fang Yan. I asked him if he liked Liang Muhan, and he said, "What does that have to do with me?" Isn't that a clear indication of disinterest? Once again, his reasoning astonished me, leaving me momentarily speechless, while he chattered incessantly. Did I ask him if he liked me? He didn't respond, which is just him being shy, right? That means he must be in love with me. I clapped my hands, utterly impressed by his explanation. Well done. I gave him a thumbs up. Wishing you success. The plan must continue. I still need to heed Liang Muhan's summons, always at his beck and call. He called me into his office, saying that once he was done with his work, we would discuss the collaboration. Yet, I ended up sitting in the office for an entire afternoon, and by the time he finished, he had already left for the day. Even when he went out for other collaborations, he insisted I accompany him. If I refused, he would conclude the meeting ordering me to fetch him. Eventually, overwhelmed with frustration, I slapped him in anger. I expected him to be furious, but instead, he merely touched his cheek, let out a sigh, and left with a silly grin. After enduring his relentless torment for half a month, it finally came to a halt, for today was his 24th birthday, and he needed to return home. Gu Zhou, seeing that I had finally found some leisure, dragged me out for drinks. After a few rounds, he slurred his words, lamenting, "Woo-woo, why doesn't Fang Yan get closer to me? What is so great about Liang Muhan?" I swirled the wine in my glass, casually asking, "Why do you all seem to adore omegas? What is so remarkable about them?" He took another hearty swig from the bottle, stammering, "Of course they're wonderful. You have no idea how adorable omegas are. So soft and fragrant. Who wouldn't he love them?" I recalled the way Fang Yan would cling to Liang Muhan with a pout, and took a sip of my drink. Indeed, they were rather charming. Liang Muhan must be holding Fang Yan's hand at the birthday banquet now. Perhaps the next news would be their engagement. The more I thought about it, the more despondent I became, while Gu Zhou lay beside me like a lifeless corpse. At that moment, an Omega waiter knocked and approached, sweetly smiling at me. "Big brother, would you like to try our new wine?" He blinked his bright eyes, forming a lovely crescent, and gently perched himself on my lap. I was momentarily flustered, hastily downing the glass of wine. The Omega seemed pleased with my reaction, his arm wrapping around me, tracing my collarbone. I suddenly remembered Gu Zhou's earlier words, and instead of pushing the Omega away, I allowed him to frolic upon me, despite my own discomfort. I was curious to see if Omegas truly were as delightful as everyone claimed. Fearing he might shift away, I took the initiative to wrap my arms around his delicate waist. I dared not touch recklessly, but I had to admit, he was indeed fragrant and supple. "Big brother," he sweetly called, planting a kiss on my cheek. Blood rushed to my head, and I almost pushed him away, but just then, Liang Muhan walked in. He entered with a dark expression, yanking the Omega off me, followed closely by Fang Yan. The Omega wisely vacated the scene, and Gu Zhou, hearing the commotion, groggily sat up. "Su Cheng, what are you doing?" he shouted, filled with anger and dissatisfaction, his fists clenched as he interrogated me. His question ignited my own fury, and I shrugged off his hand. "What business is it of yours?" He appeared momentarily stunned, then let out a couple of incredulous laughs before grabbing me again. Meanwhile, Gu Zhou paid no mind to me. Upon seeing Fang Yan, he immediately threw himself onto him, sobbing, "You really came for me, Fang Yan baby. I thought you wouldn't come to pick me up, woo-woo. So it was you who betrayed the address. I wondered how Liang Muhan managed to find this place." Fang Yan pushed Gu Zhou's head aside and exchanged a glance with Liang Muhan. Ignoring my struggles, Liang Muhan dragged me out of the bar and shoved me into the car, locking the doors. "What are you doing, Liang Muhan? Let me out." He didn't give me a moment to scold him. After entering, he swiftly seized the back of my neck, kissing me with aggressive fervor. I fought against him, struggling to free my hands, but he effortlessly pinned them above my head, using his other hand to grip my chin, forbidding any resistance. With my hands immobilized, I bit down on his lower lip in desperation, the metallic taste of blood flooding my mouth before he finally released me. "Liang Muhan, are you out of your mind? Let me go." He wiped the blood from his mouth with his thumb, his eyes dark and his voice laced with restrained fury. Don't even think about it. You think I'm letting you out to frolic with other omegas? After saying this, he started the car and drove away from the place that irked him. I couldn't help but let out a sarcastic laugh. So you're allowed to form a union with Fang Yen, but I can't get close to other omegas? He furrowed his brow, visibly displeased as he asked, What do you mean by a union with Fang Yen? Who told you that? My mother, perhaps? I remained silent, tacitly confirming it. Well done, Su-chung. Why do you listen to her about who I should marry? He gritted his teeth and slammed the steering wheel. Whether out of anger at me or the red light, I couldn't tell. 6 years ago, you said you were going to buy me a cake. Yet you ended up losing yourself. I turned my head away, unwilling to meet his gaze. Regardless, 6 years ago, I had indeed accepted a bribe from his mother. The car finally came to a halt, and he exited to retrieve something from the trunk before opening the passenger door for me. When I stepped out, I realized he was holding a cake. The destination was my small house. As night fell, the moon shone brightly, and he stood in the moonlight, speaking like a specter. You owe me a cake, and now that I've brought it, I've changed my mind. What? I looked at him, a chill running down my spine as fear crept in. Then you shall be the cake. Without giving me a chance to protest, he dragged me upstairs. Anxious about what might happen, I refrained from struggling on the staircase, and in the scuffle, the cake toppled precariously. Eventually, it was placed haphazardly on the table. The lights were still off when he unexpectedly pinned me against the door, his fervent kiss crashing onto my lips. The darkness enveloped me like a shroud of insecurity, leaving me only with his heated body and scorching breath. Woo-woo. Let go, I whimpered, all my words swallowed by the kiss. Yet, the stamina of a beta pales in comparison to that of an alpha, and I found myself yielding, collapsing into his embrace. The air grew thin, breathing became increasingly difficult, and eventually, I caught a whiff of pepper. When I finally gasped for fresh air, tears streamed down my face, not solely from the physical struggle but from the deeper turmoil and bitterness within my heart. Upon seeing my tears, he panicked and hurriedly wiped them away, softening his voice. Su-chung, I no longer have a union with Fang Yen. He then embraced me, his voice trembling as he explained. I have a union with you. This was indeed pertinent to me, I corrected myself. Not that I asked you to dissolve it. He kissed my forehead, his voice quivering. Yes, I did it willingly. He locked the door of the room, making it seem as if this were his home. I leaned against the window, peering down. The third floor was neither too high nor too low. I shook my head, dismissing the thought of jumping. Shall you wash first, or shall I? I turned my head to see Liang Muhan emerging from the only room, holding a set of pajamas. Upon closer inspection, I realized that this was indeed my old pajama set. How did he manage to dig it out? It had been 6 years since I last wore it. Could it still fit? Perhaps my disdain was etched upon my face, for he approached me, placing the pajamas into my arms with a resigned expression, saying, It's clean. Skeptical, I lifted it to my nose for a whiff, expecting the musty scent I imagined, but instead, I detected a sharp note of pepper that was rather pungent. I scrunched my nose, uncertain, and took another sniff, only for Liang Muhan to snatch the pajamas back, impatiently retorting, Are you going to wash it or not? I raised my gaze, intending to question his sudden odd behavior, but was met with his furrowed brow and the flush of his ears. He leaned closer, meeting my gaze, a teasing smile gracing his lips as he quipped, Or do you wish to wash it with me? Instantly, the color of embarrassment flooded my cheeks, and I shot him a glare, reclaiming the pajamas while muttering insults under my breath. You lunatic! Do you not realize how small the bathroom is? What? I snapped my mouth shut, forcing a saccharine smile as I provocatively challenged him. Oh, do you want me to scrub your back, President Liang? The smile vanished from his face, the flush creeping down to his cheeks as he straightened up, a rare hint of panic in his tone. No, that's not necessary. With that, he turned and hurried to his room, almost tripping over his own feet. I let out a derisive snort, flashing him a middle finger and audibly declaring, Idiot! All talk and no action, little chicken. After my shower, I emerged feeling invigorated. The shower head, which had been replaced at some point, no longer dripped incessantly like a light rain. To my surprise, even my usual toiletries were neatly arranged. It was now evident that Liang Muhan had indeed returned to stay, and for quite some time at that. What a peculiar choice, Why reside in this small, dilapidated house when he had a villa? After my shower, I found myself momentarily stunned by the tidiness of the room, realizing that the young Master Liang had actually tidied up. Even in the past, I had never witnessed him doing such a thing. You rest. I'll go shower, he said, standing up and leaving the room without sparing me another glance, closing the door behind him with a thoughtful touch. I lay on the bed, inhaling the comforting scent of the freshly laundered blankets, but my mood soured. Tossing and turning, I waited for the sounds of water to cease, yet Liang Muhan did not return. Surely, he wouldn't consider sleeping on the sofa? It was so small, and he was nearly 6 feet tall. How could he possibly fit? The bed, no matter how small, was at least 5 feet long. 2 people could manage to squeeze in. Had he lost his mind? The thought vexed me, making me thirsty, so I decided to fetch a glass of water. Quietly opening the door, I was met with the sight of Liang Muhan seated on the sofa. The soft yellow light cast a somewhat melancholic aura around him. Perhaps it was the gentle glow of the light or the cacophony of cicadas outside. Regardless, before I could ponder further, I found myself standing behind him. He turned at the sound, shock evident in his expression, a hint of white cream adorning his lips. What's wrong? He swallowed the cake in his mouth, his brow furrowed in confusion. Noticing my gaze, he glanced at the unsightly cake before bringing it over to me. Would you like to try some? The cake was a haphazard mess, yet I recognized it immediately. It resembled the cake I had eaten 6 years ago before I left. What were the odds of such a coincidence? I shook my head, dismissing the thought. I was 24, not foolish enough to fall for such nonsense. Not hungry? He observed my refusal, looking at the ugly cake with a hint of despondency in his eyes. No. I approached him, using my finger to swipe a bit of cream before gently dotting it on the tip of his nose. Suchang, I began. I placed my cream-covered finger to his lips, inadvertently smearing a little more on him. Liang Muhan, close your eyes. It was a simple command, yet he obediently complied, closing his eyes as if entranced, waiting for my next move. I leaned in, brushing my lips against the corner of his mouth, allowing the cream to slip into my own. The sweet, rich flavor melted in my mouth. Just moments later, I stood back, only to find Liang Muhan staring at me intently. In his eyes, I saw my own reflection, his gaze revealing unmasked desire. I did not shy away, sharing this moment of unspoken connection, observing the way his throat bobbed as he swallowed. Happy 18th birthday, Liang Muhan, I murmured softly. I'm already 24, he replied, his lips parting in mild surprise as he corrected me. I know. I tilted my head, meeting his gaze with a smile, but consider this a belated celebration of your 18th. With that, I turned and retreated to my room, certain that he wouldn't be sleeping anytime soon. I was unsure whether the Liang Muhan of 6 years ago had harbored feelings for me, but I was certain that the Liang Muhan of today loved me. Whether out of obsession or genuine affection, I simply wished to follow my heart. After all, this relationship should not be a solitary source of sorrow. The bitter cake from 6 years ago had finally turned sweet today. The following morning, I awoke to find Liang Muhan with dark circles under his eyes, appearing somewhat fatigued. However, this time I naturally settled into the passenger seat. Where to? To the hotel. As I fastened my seatbelt, he suddenly cleared his throat and quietly asked, "The hotel?" A mere glance was enough for me to realize he had misinterpreted my words. I chuckled helplessly, "My hotel, to fetch the contract." Oh, he flusteredly pressed the accelerator, nearly launching the car forward. Thank goodness there were no traffic cops around. Upon reaching the hotel, I dashed into Gu Zhou's room, only to discover he was absent. Reluctantly, I called him to hurry over to Ruisheng. To my surprise, amidst his stammering, I thought I heard Fang Yan's voice in the background. Without further thought, I decided to go ahead myself, only to find Liang Muhan still waiting, his conspicuous Bentley parked outside the hotel. "Why haven't you left?" I asked as I slid into the car. "Waiting for you?" He glanced at the contract in my hand, frowning as he inquired, "Did I say I wanted to sign?" "Huh?" I turned to him, gritting my teeth as I questioned, "What exactly are you dissatisfied with, President Liang?" Sign, he gulped, starting the car. "I'm satisfied to death." Arriving at the company, Gu Zhou finally made his appearance, followed closely by Fang Yan. When had they grown so familiar? After we finalized the contract, Gu Zhou was so overjoyed he nearly jumped up. Although I was the main contributor, The true beneficiary was indeed Guzhou. The younger brother of Shin Siyu, he had been raised abroad and was not well known. The Shin family was vast and powerful, but Guzhou's ambitions lay not within the business realm. The old man Shin decreed that if he managed to secure this collaboration, Guzhou could pursue his true passions. Thus, he was now spinning in circles with Fang Yan in the conference room, drawing the attention of everyone present. Cough, cough. Fang Yan closed his eyes, coughing a couple of times, evidently lacking the courage to open them. Well, you two carry on, haha, Guzhou said, releasing Fang Yan's hand and leading him away while still managing to address work matters. Su Cheng, I leave the rest to you. I face-bombed, lacking the strength to lift my head again. Earning money is tough and the life of a worker is no life at all. When I returned to report, Liang Muhan dropped me off at the airport. I expected him to be reluctant, yet he merely embraced me briefly, saying he would wait for my return. I was perplexed and did not take his words to heart. Upon my return, I delivered a flawless report, and Shin Siyu patted my shoulder, announcing a promotion for me. He wanted to appoint me as the director of a subsidiary, with the location still in Jiangqing. Was it mere coincidence? To return just to leave again? On my first day back, I encountered Jiang Zhou and Fang Yan. In Jiang Zhou, with great enthusiasm, he pulled me to reminisce. Fang Yan arched his beautiful eyes and flashed a gentle smile at Guzhou, saying, Guzhou, I left my bracelet in the car. Could you fetch it for me? Sure. After Guzhou departed, Fang Yan immediately concealed his smile. I took a sip of coffee and, getting straight to the point, inquired, what is it? Speak freely. Far more astute than that foolish lad Guzhou, he remarked, casting a glance at Guzhou outside. For some inexplicable reason, I perceived a glimmer of happiness in his eyes, a sentiment distinct from the one he shared with Liang Muhan. My engagement with Liang Muhan has long been annulled. Yes, he mentioned it. Fang Yan nodded, as if he had anticipated this. He then posed a counter-question, do you know when it was dissolved? I shook my head, genuinely unaware. 2 years ago, during your absence, he was in a rather poor state. He repeatedly investigated your whereabouts, questioning why you left without a word. Eventually, he learned that it was his mother who drove you away, leading to a fierce argument between them, but she refused to divulge your location. Thus, after resisting for a year, he capitulated, returned to the Liang family, and agreed to remarry me, allowing the Liang family to dictate the terms. I was taken aback. So are you wondering why he has now severed our engagement? He spent 4 relentless years in university and took another 2 years to achieve his current standing, no longer heeding others, hence your return. What do you mean? Could my return be linked to Liang Muhan? Do you really believe Liang Muhan and Shin Siyu are strangers? That would be rather naive, Su Cheng. They inhabit the same circle and are business partners. Otherwise, why would Shin Siyu, a scion of wealth, show you such care? I had no idea. You are blissfully ignorant. You remain unaware that during your senior year, Liang Muhan indulged my attachment to him, fully aware that if he distanced himself from me, you would be in peril. It would be all too simple for the Liang family to deal with you. I was perplexed. Despite his tone betraying disdain for Liang Muhan, why was he attempting to ingratiate himself with him? And what of you now? Rest assured, I shall no longer cling to Liang Muhan. He is far too arrogant and frigid, hardly deserving of affection. Now that Jiang Zhou has appeared, and he is so fond of me, he raised an eyebrow. The Shin family is no less formidable than the Liang family. I was utterly astonished, gazing at Fang Yan, feeling an overwhelming sense of unfamiliarity. In the past, he always wore an innocuous expression, treating everyone with gentleness and politeness. Do not look at me like that. An Omega must forge a prosperous path in this society. He waved his hand, seemingly amused by my reaction. To be frank, had it not been for the sight of Liang Muhan pursuing you for so long without success, I would have been reluctant to share this with you. After all, witnessing your mutual love and misunderstandings is rather amusing. The door creaked open, and Fang Yan's playful smile instantly transformed into one of sweetness as Guzhou retrieved the bracelet. Extending his slender wrist, he looked up at Guzhou with a gentle gaze and murmured, "Thank you." I observed Guzhou's reddened ears and shook my head. This fellow would surely be outmaneuvered by Fang Yan. I did not inform Liang Muhan of my return. Yet, without my saying a word, I encountered him that very evening in the small house. Su Cheng, why have you returned? I approached, listening to the cicadas chirping outside, quietly playing along. This is my home. Why should I not come back? No, that's not what I meant. Liang Muhan, why do you often stay here? Is it because of me? Yes. Just that one word, and he was unwilling to elaborate further. After all these years, I had thought he had changed, but he remained as obstinate as ever. I leaned closer, until we were merely 20 centimeters apart, and boldly declared, I like you, Liang Muhan. I saw his pupils constrict abruptly. Disregarding his reaction, I rose on my toes and kissed his lips. His stubbornness was no match for the softness of the kiss. He paused for a moment, then took control, gripping the back of my head to deepen the kiss. Gradually, his lips traveled to my ear, then to my neck, finally nipping and teasing that tender flesh, sending shivers down my spine. I tugged at his hair and scolded him playfully. Liang Muhan, are you a dog? No, he rasped, his voice hoarse. Su Cheng, I want to mark you. I chuckled softly. I am a beta. You cannot mark me. That does not matter. I will mark you every time. Liang Muhan, are you still human? With no refusal forthcoming, he bit down firmly, a delightful blend of pain and pleasure. After a while, he nestled into the crook of my neck, saying, No, I am Su Cheng's little dog. His response delighted me, as I inhaled the faint scent of pepper in the air, ruffling his hair. Yes, a little dog with a hint of pepper. He hesitated, then asked, Can you smell it? Yes. I gazed into his sparkling eyes, which quickly dimmed with disappointment. But you do not like the scent of pepper. I do not, but I like you. He nuzzled closer, silent, yet I could distinctly feel the dampness on my collarbone. The following day, the small bed was completely retired, replaced by a large one that nearly filled the entire room. I found it amusing and asked him, Will President Liang still be residing here? Occasionally. I pinched his fingertips. How foolish, choosing to stay in this cramped little place instead of a grand villa. This is not a cramped little place. He clasped my hand in return. This is our home. When you are not around, I can only sleep here. It allows me to deceive myself into thinking you are still in the room. We should get a larger sofa. I slipped my fingers between his, intertwining our hands. Why? Am I still expected to sleep on the sofa? Was it because I bit too hard yesterday? I will be more careful in the future. No. I rose on my toes and whispered in his ear, causing his ears to flush a bright red. Hand in hand, we exited the room, and as I glanced around the familiar space, time seemed to rewind, overlapping with 6 years ago. How wonderful it was that everything remained as it once was. The end. Thank you for listening. We shall meet again in the next story.